Well, we're glad you tuned into OpenLine tonight. I'm Chuck Long here with Clint Kelly from the Kelly firm, attorney Clint Kelly. We are talking about medical malpractice. So many questions, so many comments on the show tonight, and we appreciate all of them. We are going to go right back to our lines to get to as many calls during this segment as we can. So we're going back right now. We're going to talk to Marilyn. Marilyn, thanks for your patience, and what is on your mind this evening?
Yes, I'm calling also about the time frame in Tennessee. I went through a situation where it was a job-related injury to my wrist, and they sent me through all the rehab, all of that, and then I still had problems. I went through rehab. I was off from work, came back to work, still had problems, all the while it's going on. So then eventually they just told me that I needed to go back to work. I did, still had problems. Time goes on. So eventually, I had such a problem. One doctor I went to, I had to ask for a second opinion, which I was frowned on and fussed at because I was even asking for a second opinion. That doctor did another test, a dye test, and found out that there was a tear in my wrist that was only showing up through the dye test. The years had passed. So in that case, what does a person do? I mean, I was misdiagnosed for all of this time.
When did you have the rehab done, Marilyn? What year?
A long time ago. I'm just saying about the laws and the time frame. There needs to be something that can be done. If you're going to doctors and they're misdiagnosing you and not giving you the correct answers for what you need to have done for yourself.
Well, see, Marilyn's talking about something that was brought up by Brian earlier, which is the statute of limitations issue. There needs to be a lengthening of the limitations period. She wants to know Tennessee law. Like we say, it's 1 year from the date you discover that there's been negligence, but you can't file the claim if it's been 3 years since the negligent act. I mean, it's a tight window. And until there's a political change, Marilyn, until people finally start calling their legislators and say, look, we want to have an opportunity just to get our day in court. Doesn't mean we're going to win, but we at least want to have a right to sue and do it in a reasonable time frame. And most of your states have 2 years or 3 year statute of limitations. Until we have a change on that, this is the way it's going to be.
And that is?
Sounds like she's got a workers' compensation issue too, which I'm not qualified to give an opinion on, but there's a lot going on with Marilyn.
All right, well, good to know. So Marilyn, thanks you for calling this evening, and I know it's frustrating, like some of the stories that we have heard throughout the evening. And you know, another thing is, I think some people, when they have a situation, they have a problem, the problem may have started in a January, and it's not until, you know, a March or April that they realize there is an ongoing problem. But it still starts and dates back from the time of the problem?
Well, from the time they discover the problem. So if you had a procedure done in January and then you learned in March that something went wrong, or you had an injury and it was likely traceable to the physician or hospital's neglect, you would have a year from that date of discovery to bring your claim. But again, as I keep telling people, don't wait a year, don't even wait a month. Pick up the phone and call, because the call is free and the client doesn't pay anything unless there's a recovery.
All right, good to know once again. All right, we are going back to our lines right now. So Hiram, thank you so much for your patience this evening. We're glad you're on the line with us. What is your question or comment?
Okay, I got a comment and a question.
Okay.
I want to start off with, I wanted to find out regarding incidents. There was 2 separate incidents happened. It's been in the past, and what happened was certain things happened, and I didn't get no medical attention, but then 3 other opportunities in Nashville, I had medical attention, and at one of the hospitals, they had a McDonald's there, a restaurant, and then they come to find out they did they shoot the girls from Playboy and the McDonald's, and could that do something regarding my cases about my diagnosis being real or truthful regarding the situation, if they were telling the truth or not about the diagnosis? And I want to get y'all's comment about it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hiram, you're just going to need to call my office in the morning and ask to speak to Nurse Kathy, because I can't tell enough from what you told me on the phone to make a judgment on this. I need more facts.
Okay, well, that makes sense. And you can stay tuned. We'll bring you that number during this segment. So stay tuned and you'll get that number and you can call. And again, call costs nothing. It's free. It's very important to know that. All right, we're going back to the lines right now. So Mary is on the line with us. Mary, we're glad that you're watching this evening. And do you have a question or a comment for Clint?
Yes, I'm disabled, and I had hip surgery and everything like that, and I had a reconstructed ankle. What I'm talking about, I'm chronic pain, severe chronic pain. So my doctor had me on so much medicine, like morphine 30, Oxy-10, and so much other medicine. So what gave me mostly relief was when I was laying on a magnetic pad, and it stopped me from aching in my joints and stuff. So one day I had I guess a stroke-like seizure-like system, and I went to the hospital. Well, they had put me in the bed. I guess they gave me an EEG. And from that time that I came back, I guess my electrodes in my body transparent that EEG procedure back in my body, because when I sit back on the bed, the whole procedure of the EEG is here with me. And I was wondering, what case do I have, or what can I do about this?
Okay.
You know, Mary, that just doesn't sound like a case I'd probably take, and there are a variety of reasons for that, but in a situation like that, that's one of those, I think that's going to be hard to prove negligence in a case like that.
Okay.
That's my judgment.
And, you know, one of the things, too, we've heard a lot of cases, a lot of situations this evening. And one of the things, I think, when people are watching, you know, are, what are some of the areas that you deal with? Because you deal with everything, surgical mistakes, birth trauma, anesthetic error, prescription mix-up. I mean, there's so many areas that you do deal with.
Right. And, you know, a lot of the cases involve post-surgical care where it's bad. The surgery may go okay, and then everything's ruined because the aftercare is bad. Prescription errors where a patient's supposed to get one type of medication and they get another, and believe it or not, that happens, Chuck, more often than you want to admit. Another area is misdiagnosis, you know, where patients are brought in and a diagnosis could be made by a reasonably prudent doctor or other healthcare professional, and it's missed badly. And then I've seen, surprisingly, more medical batteries, which is a legal term for operating on the wrong part or operating on the wrong person. And those cases seem to be increasing, and I think that may have something to do with the fact there's more volume in the hospitals and less of a safety margin, making sure that we're working on the right person.
All right. Well, tonight, if you're just tuning in, we are asking the expert. The expert tonight is attorney Clint Kelly from the Kelly firm. We're talking about medical malpractice, how it can affect you, how can it affect friends, family members, and that kind of thing. One of the things that I think is almost an overriding issue in this area is that statute of limitations. But you and I were talking a little bit during the break. Kind of explain where it starts if someone doesn't recognize the problem until maybe 3 months after that it might actually have occurred in the hospital or at the doctor's office.
Right. A typical example would be somebody, let's say, who had surgery in January to repair a gallbladder, and the repair was done improperly. There was a bile duct that was cut during the procedure, and the patient, maybe about 2 or 3 weeks later, changes color, turns jaundice, begins getting really, really sick, and goes to the hospital, and it takes about maybe 3 or 4 weeks after that surgery to determine that the bile duct was cut, and that's the cause of the injury. You have 1 year from the date that you discover that bile duct was cut. That's longer than the time when the actual surgery occurs, because the law says, look, we are going to give you 1 year from the date you learned that you were a victim of negligence. So that would be a situation where it's the date of discovery that the year would begin to run. But like I said, Chuck, you don't want to wait a year, you don't want to wait a month. You want to call as soon as you believe there's been a bad medical mistake and a bad injury.
And if you are just tuning in, we're talking about medical negligence, we're talking about medical malpractice, how it can affect you, how it can affect loved ones. I know sometimes that someone has a very strong case, but they ought not to do anything. Do you encounter that? very often? And have you found out why people don't do anything?
Yeah, there's a couple of reasons. One reason is there's a religious or moral opposition to lawsuits. It's just some people are taught that way or raised that way, that it's not Christian to sue somebody. Another reason would be someone who believes, I'm going to get over it. I'm just going to get over it. And then a year passes or longer and they realize they're not going to get over it and they can't feed their family anymore. Those are the two customary reasons why people will not bring a claim even if they do have a meritorious case to bring.
Now, I know on occasion, too, people read that if you're older, it's harder to bring a case like this. Is that myth? Is that fact,
No,
fiction?
it's true. We enacted caps in Tennessee back in 2010 and 2011. Again, the legislature turned hard Republican, and when it did, that was the first thing they did was pass tort reform. The legislature has capped damages on what they call non-economic damages, which hits the elderly the most, because basically in those cases you're capped at $750,000 because a lot of those people don't earn money anymore. They're out of the workforce. So the law punishes the elderly people in favor of taking cases for young people or perhaps people that are still working. And that was the intention of the law, was to cut down on the number of claims. But by doing that, they cut out a lot of people who had worthy claims to bring, because there's not enough money at stake to justify the expense. And some of these cases can cost me $100,000 to get to trial.
Well, and another thing that's important, and again, if you are just tuning in, we don't have a lot of time left in this show, but one thing that's important is, I know a lot of times when someone is considering, do I have a case or not, it's like, and do I go meet with the attorney? They're thinking that's going to cost to meet with the attorney. But it is important, we've said it often, but it is important when they call you, it costs nothing to
free.
Contact you.
It's absolutely free, and the client doesn't pay anything until there's money recovered. So unless there's money recovered, some type of settlement or verdict, client's not out anything. I don't want to say there's nothing to lose, because there's always emotional investment in these cases, but there's no financial loss involved. That's why, I'll say it again, it costs nothing to make the call. It can make the difference between someone being able to feed their family and someone not being able to, or someone being able to hold a doctor or hospital accountable and someone not.
Have you seen more cases in certain areas than other areas when people contact you, as far as things that have happened?
Yeah, right now what I'm seeing more of than anything else are prescription errors, and I'm seeing post-operative care that's not good. And it's not necessarily the doctors. The doctors may do a very good job during the surgery, but the nurses who are assigned to take care of the patient after the surgery don't do a good job afterwards, and they'll let what starts as a campfire turn into a forest fire, and by that time it's too late, and the patient either dies or has a terrible post-operative complication such as paralysis. And so I'm seeing more and more of that right now, because I think that's the way our healthcare system's going.
Well, and you mentioned prescription errors, and to me that would be a situation where if there is an error, you may not see the effects until maybe months later. So is that another situation with the statute of limitations?
It is, and I'll tell you another area where that's happening, Chuck, in prescription errors are pharmacies. I've seen more and more people, or I'm getting more and more calls from people who went in to have one prescription filled, they took 2 or 3 pills and realized it's the wrong prescription. Sometimes they're harmed badly, sometimes they're not really harmed at all, but imagine if you can't even trust the pill that's coming out of your bottle being the right medication, that's a big problem.
Well, and how does that affect then if they don't realize it until a month later, two months later?
1 year or however long it is, they discover they were given the wrong medication. I had one lady that was prescribed tramadol, and they got the dosage wrong. It was supposed to be 200 milligrams. She took 400 milligrams of 400 milligram pills, and 2 weeks later had a seizure. And she didn't know it till she went to the emergency room. They told her the reason for the seizure was the tramadol overdose.
And so that is when the time would start from that.
The year would run when she learned that she had a seizure from tramadol overdose.
Wow. And just so that people are clear as they are tuning in just toward the end of the show, is that statute of limitations, though, is 1 year, but it's only like that in Tennessee. I mean, other states sometimes have longer
ones.
Yeah.
That's correct. And we are in a small minority of states that have just a 1 year statute of limitations from the date of discovery. Most states have at least 2 years.
Okay. All right. Well, like I said, we're going to have a big change, hopefully.
I hope so.
Yeah, soon. So, all right. When we come back, we are going to give the information on how you can contact the Kelly firm. This is OpenLine. We'll be right back after this.